Hey y'all, I'm Anisha at Smarty Pants Kitchen, and today we're going to make Southern Cornbread Dressing. It's just in time for Thanksgiving, and it's kind of a great day, and I have all the ingredients. So I'm going to show you how we make ours, and you can find the full details and the printable recipe at my website at smartypantskitchen.com. So first things first, what we're going to talk about are the ingredients. And about 2 days before you make your Southern Cornbread Dressing, you're going to make 2 pans of cornbread and crumble them up and put them in a big bowl or a flat pan, and you just want to let them crumble them up real fine until they're good and dry. You're going to need 2 pans of cornbread, which equates to about 8 cups of crumbled up cornbread. If you don't want to make your own cornbread, I've measured out this bag of Pepperidge Farm. This has 4 cups each, so you could use 2 of these. So we need the cornbread, and then we're going to use a little bit of the Pepperidge Farm early season stuffing, and we use about 2 cups of this. We'll use 1 pound of ground pork sausage. I prefer the kind with sage because it gives it a nice flavor, but if you can't find, just get the plain one and we'll add some sage to it. You're going to need a 9 by 13 pan. You're going to need some butter. Part of the butter we will saute some vegetables in. The other part we're going to grease the pan. We're going to need onions, celery, 2 eggs, and chicken broth. Okay, so let's get started. First things first, we're going to brown the sausage and saute the onions, butter, and celery in a saucepan. Okay, quick note about the sausage. When you put the sausage, the ground sausage, in a pan, you want to break it up into small pieces, and as it's cooking, use a wooden spoon and continue to break it up into really, really small chunks. And then once it's browned, if there's a significant amount of oil, you can drain it, but usually pork sausage doesn't give that much oil, so just don't worry about it. But go ahead and get this going, break it up into small pieces, and then next we'll saute the onions and celery. While the sausage is cooking, you'll want to saute your onions and celery in butter. So what I've got here is 3/4 of a stick of butter. I did use salted butter, but we'll talk about that later. So I'm going to put the butter, 1½ cups of chopped onions. I used a sweet yellow onion, and 1½ cups of celery. That's about 4 stalks or so. It doesn't have to be perfect. So we're going to put this on low heat, and then we'll combine it all together. Okay, so we're browning our sausage. Right behind me, we're browning our sausage, and we're sauteing the butter and onions and celery slowly. And now what we're going to do is go ahead and butter our pan. I used the 3/4 butter in the celery and onion mixture. I'm going to use the last quarter. Probably will only take a tablespoon, but you just want to oil your pan real well. All around the edges. The softer the butter, the easier it is. This is the part I hate because my hands get all yucky. So get this pan nice and prepped. And what I do is, I know it's not pretty, but I usually serve it in this just because if you have a big crowd, this is the best way. So this is going to make about 16 servings. But anyway, I usually prep it, mix it, and bake it all in the same pan. So that's what we're going to do today. If that's not how you want to do it, you can always transfer the mixture to a pretty baking dish. But for right now, we're going to use this. This is a 9 by 13, and we've got it fully buttered. And then we have day-old cornbread that I've shredded up. I'm just going to dump it in. So the reason that the stale cornbread is important, it's not, I don't guess you'd really call it stale, but it's day-old cornbread. The reason that you want to make sure that you have that is because it will absorb the chicken broth that we're going to put in later, and that will help ensure that your dressing is not gummy or messy. So you can tell this is going to make a lot of dressing, and it's going to be hard to mix. I've done this a couple of ways, a couple of different times, and I have found the easiest way is to just use your hands, clean hands, and get in and mix it all up and go from there. So my hands are clean, so when we get to that point, don't freak out. All right, so we've got 8 cups of the homemade cornbread or dried cornbread, and now we're gonna put in 2 cups of the Pepperidge Farm seasoned herb dressing. This is a 2-cup measuring cup. That's a heaping 2-cup measure. So at this point, it's not necessary to use your hands. You just want to kind of stir this around and combine it. Our sausage is still cooking. Our celery and onions are still cooking. As soon as that gets done, we're going to put it all in here. The lightly beaten egg, poultry seasoning, a smidgen of sage, and chicken broth, and then we're going to bake it. Okay, the sausage is brown. You can see there it's not super dark, but it's brown. There's no visible pink. And what I did was, while it was cooking, I just took this wooden spoon and chop it up. We want it into really, really small pieces so nobody gets a big chunk of sausage. Now, if you don't want to include a protein in your dressing, you don't have to include this. Some people put chicken in there, shredded chicken. You could do that or just leave it out. But this really adds a lot of flavor, and it gives it a little bit of texture and a little bit of added seasoning and salt. So let me repeat also, if you use plain ground sausage, you're going to want to add a little sage and poultry seasoning to the dressing. If you use ground sausage with sage, you'll just add poultry seasoning. So this is cooling, and my onions and celery are still sauteing. So what we're going to do now is put together, what we're going to do now is lightly beat 2 eggs in a bowl. We'll be adding those to the dressing. 2 large eggs should be fine. We'll just beat these together lightly and set those to the side. Okay, the onions and celery have sauteed in the butter. Oh, it's smelling really good in here. This may not, I was gonna make this and freeze it for Thanksgiving, but it's not gonna make it to Thanksgiving. It's gonna be gone before then. Okay, so what we wanna do now, we're working with clean hands, keep that in mind. We're gonna start building this beautiful dressing, and this is gonna swell up and make a huge amount. This is enough for probably 12 people, and everybody goes back for seconds, so you're gonna have plenty. And it's gonna make a mess because it's gonna go everywhere. So we've got our onions and celery and butter. I'm gonna pour the whole thing in here, butter and all. I'm gonna give that a little toss to kind of get it mixed in. It's hot, so of course I can't use my hands right now. Get this combined in here pretty well. Okay, we're gonna keep stirring, so don't worry if it's not even. Now we're gonna put in the sausage. It did not put off a lot of excess oil, so I'm going to put it all in here. So I'll add that in. This is my grandmother's recipe and my mother's recipe. Some people use cream soups or whatnot, but this is all natural with no preservatives, just chicken broth and bread and eggs. So this is where it gets tricky. So I'm going to continue to use this, I want you to see, continue to use this tiny little spoonula here. And get it combined as well as we can. I could divide it into two containers, but I've done that before, and when you start adding the seasonings, it makes me nervous because I think, I didn't get it right. Okay, so we've got this pretty well combined. It's not going to be perfect yet, but it's combined well enough. So here's what we're going to do now is we're going to drizzle on the egg, and our seasonings are, because we did not use sausage with sage, so I'm going to add sage. I'm using, I better check my notes. Hang on. I wrote it down because, okay, I'm using a half a tablespoon of sage, a half a tablespoon of sage, and 1 whole tablespoon of poultry seasoning. So here's what I do. This is a whole tablespoon of poultry seasoning, and I'm gonna have to make it go through this whole pan. So what I do is I just distribute half of it, and then put the eggs in, and half of the sage, mix it up, add the other half, and mix it up, and then add the chicken broth. So 1 tablespoon of 1 tablespoon of poultry seasoning, I'm just gonna put half on. I'm gonna put on half of the sage. You wanna go easy on the sage because poultry seasoning has sage in it, and if you put too much sage, your cornbread dressing turns green. So, and then we're gonna drizzle on these eggs, 2 eggs, lightly beaten. Here comes the fun part. I'll try not to use my hands, but it's gonna be best if I just use my hands at some point. I don't want to do it right now in the middle of this video because then I have to be going back to the sink washing my hands. So bear with me. But if you're at home doing this, at this point, if it's easier for you to use, clean hands too. Okay, so and you're going to look at this and think, oh, this is going to be too dry. It's not. Okay, so now let's add the chicken broth. You can use chicken stock or chicken broth, and you're going to use 6 cups. Again, do it in halves. 3 cups, mix, 3 more cups. This container, 8 times 4 is 3, is 4 cups. So I'm going to use almost all of this. I'll clean that up later. Just drizzle it over. That's about 3 cups. And we're going to combine it. Now notice also I haven't added any salt. I use salted butter, the chicken stock has salt, and the sausage has salt. If you want to add salt, start with a half a teaspoon because it sneaks up on you. It does sneak up. All right, so there's 3 cups. There's 4. It's starting to come together. It's starting to firm up a little. I'm telling you, this makes a lot. This is so easy to make though. I mean, before I knew how to make dressing, I was like, somebody else bring the dressing. I don't know how to make it. And then one Christmas I sat and I watched my mom make it and I wrote it down step by step by step. We tried it. It worked. We made a few adjustments. And the oven's ready to go. Okay, this is starting to get a little thicker, so that's what we want. So now I'm gonna add in the rest of my seasoning. The other tablespoon or half tablespoon of poultry seasoning. And that last little smidgen of sage. And at this point, I am gonna add some salt. I'm gonna add about a half a teaspoon. I'm going lightly because this is an open pour container, so it could. And then I am going to add a little ground black pepper if I can find it. All right, so sage, salt, pepper. Sage and salt. Here we go. This is the second half of the chicken broth. That's half of that, so we're almost there. Starts to get gummy, but it won't be gummy. I promise you it won't be gummy when you get ready to eat it. Can you see how the texture is? It smells delicious. It's not even cooking. Let me get just a smidgen of black pepper. What did I do with it? Put a little black pepper over it. Now, even though this has raw egg in it right now, you can taste a smidgen to see if you want more salt. So after I finish adding the rest of this chicken broth, I'm going to taste it, and you can kind of get a good idea. This makes a lot. You just want to make sure at this point everything is coated and there's no dry breadcrumbs. Yeah, I'm gonna have to just dig in and do it. That's the only way I can get to the bottom. Just fold it. Don't try not to move it around too much, but you want to get up under the bottom. There we go. Okay, this is looking good. Let me wash my hands real quick. Okay, so I did have to use my hands. I washed them. Okay, so we got it all. I've got one more cup in here I want to use. Remember, it was a total of 6 cups. This was 4, this was for 8, so I'm not using that whole thing. And we're going to bake this on the middle rack, uncovered, for 25 to 30 minutes. If you want to make this in advance, you can freeze it as it is right now. Just cover it with plastic and cover it with foil and put it in the freezer. Or you can bake it and freeze it. Now, if you freeze it and it's not cooked, of course you'll take the plastic wrap and the foil off, but you want it to come to room temperature before you put it in the oven, and you just bake it as if you were doing it on the day of. Same thing with if you've already baked it. The only difference, actually, if you've already baked it and you freeze it, you might want to cover it a little so the top won't get too brown. All right, can you see the consistency of that? It's hard to see, but it kind of looks mushy. It will not be mushy, I promise you. It will be nice and flavorful. So now I'm going to taste for a smidgen of salt and see if it needs any salt. See, this just a little bit won't hurt with raw egg. It does not need any salt. It's perfect. That's going to be good. Okay. So, okay, so simple ingredients, easy recipe. Dried cornbread, start out with homemade cornbread or the packaged kind. When you get ready to assemble it and the pan starts to get full, or if you don't have a bigger pan or whatever, do the seasonings in halves and the chicken broth in 3-cup increments so that you can mix it all together. So this is it. What we're going to do now is pop this in the oven and bake it 25 to 30 minutes. So when it comes out, we're going to pop it in the oven 350 on the middle rack, and you don't have to cover it or anything. And when it's nice and brown on top, after it sits a while, it's perfect. So I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out. It's heavy. Okay, I just got the dressing out of the oven about 5 minutes ago, and look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Nice and golden brown on top. This pan is very hot. Isn't that yummy? It's got some crispy top. Let's see what it looks like when we slice into it. Can you see that? Now see, that is delicious. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And you drizzle some homemade turkey gravy over that and enjoy it. This is really good, y'all. You gotta try it. If you have never made cornbread dressing, this is so easy. It's such a great recipe. It's all natural. It takes about 35 minutes. At the end of the day, I cooked mine from 136, 131 till about 2:15. So maybe 40, 45 minutes, but it is delicious. Remember, you can get all the details and recipe tips at smartypantskitchen.com. Look for Southern Cornbread Dressing. Y'all have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you and enjoy.